What's up, everybody? FTWitachi here. You know what it is. Thank you all very much for tuning in to what is most likely our last staple guide for Shadowlands for World of Warcraft Warlocks. We are here to go ahead and update our legendary items guide for Warlocks and Shadowlands. For the pre-patch of Shadowlands, we started releasing guides, and then a couple of weeks into the expansion, we have started to release our updated versions of those guides pertaining to patch 9.0.2, which is the latest patch in World of Warcraft. We have released a guide for Demonology, Destruction, and Affliction Warlocks pertaining to both PvP, PvE aspects of the game, also covering things like gems, enchants, consumables, rotations, so on and so forth. So please go ahead and check out those 3 videos. We've also released a guide for Warlocks in regards to Covenants. We've released a guide in regards to Soulbinds, as well as Conduits. So we've released many videos which you can all find in our World of Warcraft Shadowlands playlist. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out some more World of Warcraft content, we do live stream as well. Go ahead and please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button down below. It'd be greatly appreciated. I do want to say thank you all very much for the positive feedback thus far with these videos. I do have a lot more to grow when it comes to the layouts and the makings and editings of these videos, and I do want to go ahead and say stay tuned for some more great content. If you guys are interested, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Again, if you have any questions, subscribe if you can, like the video, all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go over what are legendary items in World of Warcraft. So in Shadowlands, legendary items are being reimagined. So instead of working to acquire a legendary gear piece through a quest line and all this expansive stuff, you will work to acquire materials that will allow you to craft and add a legendary power to an existing gear piece. Every class has 4 general legendary powers that all specs can use, and each spec has 4 spec-specific legendary powers. So Warlocks have 3 specs, each spec has 4 powers, that's going to be a total of 12, and then each class has 4 general legendary powers, making that 16, and then there's 8 total legendary powers that all classes can use, totaling this out at 24 legendary powers for Warlocks, which we're specifically going to go over each one before we get into deep details on Demonology, Destruction, and Affliction. We're going to go ahead and when we get to those each spec-specific parts of this video, we're going to go ahead and cover like the top 3 legendary powers, because I'm not going to be going over all 24, because most of them, to be honest with you, 80 to 85% of these legendary powers are useless when it comes to the spec. Number 1, 8 of them are already locked because they're, for example, I'm a Demonology Warlock, I can't use powers from Destruction and Affliction, and then most of the general powers are not even worth using at all. You're mainly going to be focusing out of the 8 that come from either your spec or the general class legendary powers. So we'll go over it a little bit easier so you guys can understand when we get into each of the specs. However, let's go ahead and go over by starting off with the general legendary powers. Again, all classes have access to 8 general legendary powers. Starting off with Echo of Eonar, your spells and abilities have a low chance to summon a spiritual familiar to your side, increasing your damage by 10%, healing by 10%, or damage reduction by 10% for 10 seconds. Based on your roll, this effect is duplicated on up to 3 allies at 50% effectiveness, preferring allies with the same roll. Judgment of the Arbiter. Dealing damage has a high chance to release a blast of spiritual energy for shadow damage. If another ally who bears the judgment of the Arbiter is within 5 to 20 yards of you, the blast will also arc to them, dealing shadow damage to enemies in the arc. Maw Battle. Killing an enemy has a high chance to summon an explosive Maw Rat at the corpse's location. After 6 seconds, the Maw Rat will explode, dealing 300 nature damage to all nearby enemies, poisoning them and decreasing their damage done by 5% for 10 seconds. Norganon's Sagacity. Casting a spell grants Sagacity, stacking up to 10 times. When you move, you are able to cast while moving for 0.5 seconds for each stack of Sagacity. Sufuza's Proclamation. We got reduce the effectiveness of crowd control effects by 10%, successfully applying a loss of crowd control effect or to an enemy, interrupting an enemy, or dispelling any targets will increase all of your secondary stats for 15 seconds. This effect cannot occur more than once every 30 seconds. Stable Phantasma Lure. Increases Phantasma earned by 25%. Looting Phantasma from enemies has a chance to summon a Phantasma Demon which will begin running in a random direction. Killing it increases Phantasma earned for the entire party by an additional 10% for 1 minute. Third Eye of the Jailer. Killing an enemy grants you the third eye, increasing your primary stat by 1% for 10 seconds. Stack up to 7 and increasing the duration by 1 second for each additional stack. The duration of the third eye is increased by 50% while in the maw. Vitality Sacrifice. Taking significant damage from a player or elite enemy increases the damage and healing by 3% of the damage taken, up to a maximum of 9% for 20 seconds. This effect can only occur every 30 seconds, and just to give you a heads up, that's all 8 general legendary powers that all classes can use. If you haven't noticed by now, some of these only work in specific areas. For example, some of these are Torghast specific legendary powers or Maw specific legendary powers, or they're just general legendary powers that don't really have any benefit to you at all when it comes to damage compared to the actual class-specific legendary powers. So let's go ahead and start off with the general Warlock legendary powers, which all specs have access to. Claw of Endereth. Drain life now channels 100% faster and restores health 100% faster. Pillars of the Dark Portal Demonic Gateway is now instant cast, and your first use of the gateway does not trigger its cooldown. In addition, Nether Energy lashes enemies you pass through, knocking them away. Relic of Demonic Synergy. Demonology damage done by you or your primary demon has a chance to grant the other one 15% increased damage. Affliction and Destruction, damage done by you or your primary demon has a chance to grant the other one 10% increased damage for 15 seconds. Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. Affliction, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Dark Glare by 2 seconds. Demonology, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Tyrant by 0.6 seconds. Destruction, every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Infernal by 1.5 seconds. Next up, Affliction Warlock specific legendary powers. Malefic Wrath. Malefic Rapture increases the damage of Drain Soul and Shadow Bolt by 25% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. Perpetual Agony of Azhakir. Agony has a 20% increased chance to generate a soul shard. Sacrilash's Dark Strike. Corruption damage is increased by 15%, and any target affected by your corruption also has their movement speed slowed by 50%. Wrath of Consumption. Targets that die with your agony or corruption applied to them grant you Wrath of Consumption. This increases all periodic damage dealt by you by 5% for 20 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Next up, Demonology specific legendary powers. Bale Spider's Burning Core. Shadow Bolt increases the damage of your Demon Bolt by 8%, stacking up to 4 times and lasts 15 seconds. Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling. Each soul shard you spend on Hand of Gul'dan increases the damage of your next Dread Stalkers by 3%. Forces of the Horned Nightmares. Hand of Gul'dan has a 15% chance to cast a second time on your target for free. Implosive Potential. Implosion grants 1% haste for 8 seconds for each imp imploded. When this damages at least 3 targets, instead, gain 5% haste per imp. Destruction Warlock legendary specific powers. Cinders of the Azhakir. Conflagrate has 1 additional charge and has its recharge time reduced by 3 seconds. Embers of the Diabolic Raiment. Incinerate now generates 100% additional soul shard fragments. Madness of Azhakir. Chaos Bolt increases the damage of Chaos Bolt by 25% and reduces the cast time of Chaos Bolt by 20% for 3 seconds. And Odor Shawl of Remerja. Enemies marked by your Havoc take 25% increased damage from your single target spells. So we're going to start off with Demonology and their top 3 Warlock legendaries for Shadowlands. Again, this is to change when future patches come, if any updates happen. Again, we will always update our guides and keep you guys up to date as best as possible. However, let's go ahead and again get into the best Demonology Warlock legendaries, and this is for all aspects of the game. Starting off with Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning, and this is actually my favorite legendary to go ahead and do. This is in no specific order. These are just the top 3 legendary powers that you would want to go ahead and try to craft for a Demonology Warlock. Available slots are Wrist and Finger, and the crafting preference is Finger. Reducing the cooldown of your Summoned Demonic Tyrant is never a bad thing and should reduce your cooldown to nearly about 60 seconds, give or take, if used correctly. That enables you to line up cooldowns more efficiently as a Demonology Warlock. It's the most well-rounded option for all content. And again, this is also a universal legendary power to where if you do want to switch specs, this is kind of an easy to craft legendary power if you're able to get the freaking thing to drop, because it took me forever to get it to drop. But it is a very universal legendary power because it works for Affliction and Destruction, so you don't If this is your first legendary that you're crafting, you can switch specs with ease. The cooldown of Summon Demonic Tyrant to about 60 seconds flows very nicely in almost all Mythic Plus content, raiding, and of course in PvP, because the Demonic Tyrant can deal a hella ton of damage. With the power of demonic consumption, having your cooldown available more often should not be discounted. Another legendary power to go ahead and craft would be Forces of the Horde Nightmare, available slots of Shoulder and Finger, but the crafting preference in my opinion should be the Shoulder. If you're just looking for a completely passive legendary, this is technically what you're going to want. It duplicates the Hand of Gul'dan cast, even if it's 1, 2, or 3 shards, you should always be using it on 3 shards, and summons the same amount of imps as the duplicated cast. It's a simple option if you are not interested in tracking much or anything for your legendary. It is currently a fair amount ahead of the other legendaries as well, as it provides a good amount of sustainable damage through Hand of Gul'dan and the extra wild imps. When it comes to damage, Forces of the Horde Nightmare is very, very high up there for Demonology Warlocks. And again, it is an easy legendary power to go ahead and utilize, because you really don't have to worry about anything except just your normal rotation. Goes ahead and buffs your Hand of Gul'dan. Again, you should always be using Hand of Gul'dan when you have 3+ soul shards anyways, giving you an additional 3 imps when you get that casted. Last but not least, to round out the top 3 for Demonology Warlocks would be Relic of Demonic Synergy. Available slots of Head and Shoulder. Crafting preference will definitely be the Helm. A simple damage bonus for both you and your Felguard, or Wrathguard, and depending on if you have a glyph or not. It's a strong in relative power due to the high uptime, and it is based on 3 RPPM individually between your pet and you. The main bonus of this legendary is the buff to your pet, because, I mean, if it does buff you, great, but most of your damage that you do as a player typically isn't as high compared to your Felguard or Wrathguard's overall damage. It's a good, well-rounded overall option. It's suitable for all contents, PvP, PvE, and Mythics, with very little maintenance or anything to really need to track. But again, when it comes to those 3 legendary powers, you should go ahead and focus on Wilfred's Sigil of the Superior Summoning, Forces of the Horde Nightmare, or Relic of Demonic Synergy as one of your 3 options for the first legendary to craft. I, myself, went with Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning because it is very, very versatile, and it is a very, very nice DPS increase in all situations. And of course, if I want to switch specs, it's very, very easy to go ahead and do so with a legendary power that is universal to the other specs. But again, once I get more options available to me, I might go ahead and switch that. I do want to go ahead and say there are some situational Demonology Warlocks. These are kind of like extra bonuses to go ahead and give you guys. Bale Spider's Burning Core isn't too bad as a legendary option for wrists and hands. The crafting preference for me would be hands. If you are able to keep 100% uptime on a constant source of amplified damage for Demon Bolt with extreme ease due to the buff lasting 15 seconds, while it is a maintenance buff, Shadow Bolt is cast often enough that you won't have to really pay attention to it, so it should always be up anyways. This could become an option later on during parsing to cheese that Demon Bolt damage, but it currently is outshined by those other 3 legendaries that I gave you. But Bale Spider's Burning Core isn't too far behind. I just want to go ahead and throw that one out there. And last but not least, another option that you could use is Implosive Potential. This is available slots of Helm and Waist, and of course, you would want to go ahead and use this as your Helm, as your crafting preference. Primarily an AoE legendary, which is why I wanted to bring this one up, that offers a little back when you use on single target. You are able to get massive haste bonuses, imploding huge numbers of imps after Summon Demonic Tyrant, especially in AoE, but also on single target. The verdict is flexible, but not really ideal outside of Mythic Plus content at this moment in time, because of the others being way more beneficial, especially the top 3 that I gave you in the current raiding atmosphere, and of course in PvP. This is kind of dead in PvP, to be honest with you. There will be some use cases for this, and it does provide a healthy amount of haste for the majority of a dungeon, but it's easily outshined by the other options. But again, I just wanted to go ahead and throw this out there that it does have its potential, and we might see it come out in the future. But again, especially for multi-targets, this is a very, very high and useful legendary to go ahead and craft. Next up, we're going to be getting into Destruction Warlocks. We got the top 3 legendary options for a Destruction Warlock. Again, in no specific order, but we have Relic of Demonic Synergy, Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. Hey, guess what? Both of those came from Demonology, so it's very, very nice to go ahead and craft those 2. And then, of course, we got Cinders of the Azure, which was my favorite option for Destruction. To give you guys a heads up, Most of the legendary options for destruction suck. Not the ones I just named. So I'm not really going to be able to give you any like additional bonuses like I did with Demonology. I give you 5 total, with 3 being the top 3. This one I'm just going to be able to talk about these 3 because these are the only useful ones for destruction at this moment in time, unless the others do get buffed. For raiding, if you craft Relic of Demonic Synergy, you're ready basically for every single encounter. As this is the strongest bonus on more or less pretty much every fight, just to give you a heads up when it comes to Relic of Demonic Synergy. You should also craft Wilfred's Sigil, which again is my favorite legendary that we currently have as a Warlock, which can also be very strong on fights where you're able to get more Summoning Infernal due to the high amount of soul shards spent. This can be ideal for a fight such as the Stone Legion in Castle Nathria, where you constantly have more ad spawn, allowing you to generate and spend more shards. And then, of course, Cinders of the Azure is also a very strong legendary for raiding as of now. This is due to the increased amount of Conflagrate cast if combined with Roaring Blaze. So again, if you are going to play the Roaring Blaze spec, this can be very, very nice. However, I myself don't use the Roaring Blaze spec, and I don't even use the Cinders of Azure legendary option, so it doesn't really affect me too much. This can be strong both on single and 2 targets, and the raid consists both of single target and cleave, so it's perfect for this bonus. Basically, when it comes to it, Relic of Demonic Synergy, the available slots, head and shoulders. Crafting preference would be the head over the shoulders. And of course, this is an all-around the strongest legendary for raiding right now, and just damage increase when it comes to both PvP and PvE aspects of the game. The increased percent proc it grants you is very strong in every single scenario. A small bonus is this legendary can also be used in the other 2 Warlock specs. So it's very, very nice to go ahead and have Relic of the Demonic Synergy, and this was also in the top 3 for Demonology at the moment that I've already stated. So again, Relic of the Demonic Synergy could be one of the first legendaries that you can craft, or you can go like me, Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning, available slots, wrist and finger. You're going to want to go ahead and crafting preference that wrist over finger. I do want to say something. I don't remember what I said earlier in the video, but I think I said finger over wrist when it came to Demonology. It's wrist over finger. I don't know why I said that. You want the more stats when you crafting your legendary. This effect can actually be very strong on fights where you're able to get more Summon Infernal due to high amount of soul shards spent at this moment. This can be ideal for a fight such as the Stone Legion, as stated earlier, where you're consistently having to, where you can constantly have more ad spawn, allowing you to generate and spend more shards. So again, Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning is very, very nice. However, when it comes to destruction, I do suggest Relic of Demonic Synergy. And again, when it comes to Demonology, they're both very, very, very nice to play for. So if you are someone that likes to switch specs a lot, Relic would probably be your better option. And then, of course, spec specific, which is actually the best one, Cinders of the Azure. Available slots of legs and back. Of course, craft that for the legs over the back piece. A very strong option for destruction, and this is due to the increased amount of Conflagrate cast if combined with Roaring Blaze. Again, like I said, I don't use this talent, but again, if you do use this talent, then this legendary power can be very, very useful, as the damage increase is better than all the rest. This can be strong both on single and 2 targets. The raid consists both of single target and cleave, so it's perfect for this bonus. Again, my favorite option when it comes to raiding would probably be Relic of the Demonic Synergy. Even PvP content, hell, both PvP content and raiding Relic of the Demonic Synergy. But when it comes to Mythic Pluses, I do strongly suggest, if you're doing Keystones, I strongly suggest Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning, because it can be very, very useful. But again, those are the only 3 I'm really going to be able to go over, because the rest of the options for Destruction Warlocks just technically suck. And last but not least, we're going to be going over the Affliction Warlock legendaries. This is technically almost identical to Destruction, where there's technically really only 3 options that I can kind of give you, because it just kind of falls off after that. The 3 options that would be Malefic Wrath, Perpetual Agony of Azure, and Relic of Demonic Synergy. When it comes to these 3, again, Malefic Wrath is the available slots, shoulder, and hands. Crafting preference would be your hands. This is Affliction's best single target legendary by far when it comes to damage, and it is also my favorite option when it comes to PvP fights as well. Whenever you want to crank pure priority single target damage, this is what you'll be doing it with. When playing with this legendary, using Malefic Rapture becomes less of a pull and dump during procs and extra dot specs. and more of an uptime spec for this legendary. So it's very, very nice. Malefic Wrath, again, Malefic Rapture increases the damage of your Drained Soul or Shadow Bolt by 25% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. Get all your dots out, and you just become a freaking train wreck with dots and your Drain Soul and Shadow Bolt, especially in PvP content. I've seen some people use this ability, and it freaking train wrecks people. Next up is Perpetual Agony of Azure. Available slots of chest and finger. Crafting preference is chest. This is a relatively strong general AoE damage legendary, while your priority damage will definitely suffer if you're using this. You should be casting Malefic Rapture more often as a result of more Shard generation. Again, Perpetual Agony of Azure. Agony has a 20% increased chance to generate a Soul Shard, and it is very, very nice for AoE situations. Again, and Relic of Demonic Synergy available slots. Again, holy! As you guys know, I've said Relic of Demonic Synergy for both Demonology and Destruction. Hint, hint, might be one of your first to go ahead and craft as a Warlock, because if you are someone that likes to play all 3 specs, this is actually the best legendary for all 3. Not the best legendary for all 3 specs specifically, but it is the one legendary. Actually, no, it's 2 legendaries. One of 2 legendaries that is actually universal to where you can play it very, very well with all 3 specs. Relic of Demonic Synergy. Available slot, Head and Shoulder, crafting preferences, Helm. This is just a general overall damage. It won't be the best at any one particular thing, but you will be competitive enough at everything when using this. Again, it is not the best option for Affliction, but it is the best option when it comes to being universal. For example, I have that as well as Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. Those 2 are my favorite legendaries to craft, and the reason being is they both work very, very well in PvE, PvP, and Mythic Plus content. You will stay up on top of the charts and be competitive with any of these 2 legendaries in all 3 specs, and it's very, very nice to go ahead and have. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there as well. Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. Every soul shard you spend reduces the cooldown of Summon Dark Glare by 2 seconds. It is not as good as Relic of Demonic Synergy for Affliction, but again, it is still a powerful legendary option. So, out of those 2, Demonology I prefer Wilfred's. Destruction I prefer Wilfred's, but Affliction I prefer Relic. So whichever one you guys want to go ahead and utilize, again, but both of those 2 legendary powers are good for all 3 specs. When it comes to the best option for raiding and PvE content, I'm gonna have to say Relic of Demonic Synergy, to be honest with you. The overall damage is just better out of the other 2 options. Malefic Wrath is actually up there as well, but I prefer Malefic Wrath because of its fast pace for Mythic Plus content. And also Perpetual Agony of Azure isn't too bad as well. Realistically, for Mythic Plus, it's going to be a toss-up between those 2. Even Relic of Demonic Synergy is up there, but it will be outbeaten by the other 2, in my opinion, at this moment in time when it comes to damage-wise. But again, for PvE aspects, I suggest Malefic Wrath for Mythic Plus Keystones, and Relic of Demonic Synergy for the straight-up Castle Nathria raid. And then when it comes to PvP situations, use one of the 2 as well. But if you're doing any multi-target battlegrounds, AoEs, a lot of ads during a fight, Perpetual Agony of Azure is probably your best bet. So with all of that said, I hope this guide kind of helps you out when it comes to spec-specific legendary powers for Demonology, Destruction, and Affliction Warlocks. Again, thank you all very much for tuning in. If anything gets updated or changed in the near future, I'll be sure to go ahead and re-release and update the guide then. But until now, let's get into some PvP action, PvE action, and let's go ahead and check us out on a live stream. Thank you very much for tuning in. Peace out.